thank you very much for coming tonight. It means a lot to me that you have given up a piece of your personal time and family time to come out tonight. And I want to talk to you a little bit about who I am. Many of you I've not met before, give you a little bit of insight into my background, how I was raised, and then tell you why I'm running for governor of California. Almost the first question I get in every group every day is, why does anyone want this job? Then talk about the agenda that I have for California, because we can turn California around, but it is going to take a different approach than the one that has been taken. And then give a quick status report on the race, and then I'd love to turn it over to all of you, and I'll occasionally try not to have my back to you. Turn it over to you for questions on just about any subject. But very quickly, by way of background, I was born and raised on Long Island, town on the North Shore called Cold Spring Harbor. Are there New Yorkers in the crowd? There usually are. I'm the youngest of 3 children. My dad worked in New York. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. But I have to tell you, she was a very adventurous mom. And what she taught me was to have a bias for action. From the earliest days, she taught me that the price of inaction is far greater than the cost of making a mistake. And I'll tell you a little story that will illustrate this for you. During World War II, like many in her generation, she wanted to join up. And what was available to women at the time was largely to be in the Red Cross. So she joined the Red Cross in Boston, where she lived, and was quite surprised on her first day when the supervisor said to her, "This class of women, we need you to go to New Guinea in the South Pacific." So she flew from Boston to San Francisco and got on a troop ship for 30 days to New Guinea. She said the very best thing about that was she got seasick and lost 30 pounds. She gets to New Guinea and the base commander greets the troop ship of women and says, "We have a shortage of airplane mechanics and truck mechanics. Which of you women would like to volunteer?" My mother, trust me, had never looked under the hood of anything. But she raised her hand because she knew that was where the need was greatest. And like so many of you in this audience, the challenge actually fueled her. And so in 4 years, she became a fully certified airplane mechanic and a fully certified truck mechanic. And she told us from the earliest days, she said to the 3 of us, "You can do anything you set your heart on, because I can overhaul a Jeep engine faster than the men." I've just written a book, which many of you may have seen. It is called The Power of Many, and I talk about the inspiration that my mother really had on me. And it was a bittersweet experience because my mother died on January 18th. And so, you know, I know she's watching, and I know she will be fascinated to see how this race turns out. But she really was an inspiration and made all the difference to the 3 of us growing up. I was lucky enough to be a product of the public school system. When I was raised, you could go to the public school system and not worry. And we have got to look at that. I'll come back to that because I have a passion for public education. I then was lucky enough to be in just the 4th class of women to attend Princeton University, which had just opened its doors to women. In fact, there were about 100 of us in a class of 1,200, and we had a great time for a whole variety of reasons. I was an athlete at Princeton, and I was an economics major, and then went on to Harvard Business School. I thought I always wanted to be in business, and I was lucky enough to be able to go to Harvard. And you might be saying, well, how in the world did you get to California? Well, I met my future husband, who was at medical school in Boston, and he very much wanted to be a doctor, and he needed to pick a city to do 7 years of residency. And he got into the very best training program in the country, which was the University of California at San Francisco. So in 1981, we decamped as newlyweds to San Francisco. We lived in the Haight-Ashbury. The Haight was not as gentrified as it is today. And my husband's from a very traditional southern Birmingham, Alabama family. And his parents came out to visit the newlyweds, and they were quite shocked, I have to say. But we loved California from day one. So my husband walked to work at UCSF, and I started my first job in California at a management consulting firm called Bain & Company. And the only reason that is interesting to you is guess who my first boss was, and my boss for 10 years at Bain & Company? Mitt Romney. And that, of course, is how I ended up working on his presidential campaign many years later. Our 2 boys were born in San Francisco. Our oldest son is now 25, has a job, and is paying his own rent. My younger son is a junior in college, and he is a rugby player, and he is a politics major. And what's quite interesting, actually, is he brought the rugby team out for spring break to California, and we had 8 of them stay at our house, and the rest stayed at friends. And we fed the rugby team. I have never seen children eat so much in my entire life. We went to Costco 6 times in 5 days. It was remarkable, but Costco is made for rugby teams. I mean, it's perfect. As Martha mentioned, I had the good fortune to work for not only Bain & Company, but many other great companies. In fact, we lived in Los Angeles for 4 years when I worked at the Walt Disney Company. I started out in strategic planning and ended up as running head of marketing for the consumer products division. And you know how in life you have people who are mentors and coaches who really look out for you? Actually, one of a small number of folks who really meant that to me was Frank Wells, the former president and CEO of Disney. He made an enormous difference to me in the 4 years that I worked there. And interestingly, I saw his wife the other day, and I was reminded of a story. After, as you know, Frank Wells died in a helicopter crash about 10 years ago. And I was at and then when I became the CEO of eBay, and eBay had such success, one day I got a call, and my administrative assistant said, "Meg, Luann Wells is on the phone." And so I picked up the phone, and she said, "You know, I just want you to know that I have watched your success, and Frank would be proud." And that's the kind of thing that, you know, so you can imagine that I loved working at all these different companies, particularly Hasbro, where I ran the preschool division before I went to eBay. And so I was responsible for Barney, Arthur, Teletubbies, my personal favorite, Mr. Potato Head. But eBay, as you can imagine, really changed my way of thinking. And I joined a young computer scientist by the name of Pierre Omidyar, who's a Persian American, actually, who had started eBay and was looking for a CEO because he was a computer scientist. He was 29 years old. And he said, "I don't know anything about business. I need someone to help." So we interviewed a number of candidates. And I came out and spent the day with him. And I said, at the end of the day, I was quite intrigued. And I said, "Pierre, what are you looking for in a CEO?" I thought he'd say financial acumen, strategic capability, leadership. He looked at me with a little grin. Remember, he was 29, and he said, "Adult supervision." And that actually gives you a little insight into Pierre, because he didn't actually need adult supervision. He was 29 going on 40, one of the most gifted founders I have ever met. But it gives you a little insight into someone who knew what they didn't know. So I was fortunate enough to serve as eBay's CEO for 10 years. And as Martha said, we took a startup to a grown-up. 30 employees to 15,000, $4.7 million of revenue to nearly $8 billion of revenue. But what was remarkable about eBay became the home of small business on the internet. By the end of the 10 years I was there, we had over 1 million people who made most, if not all, of their living selling on eBay. And people thought the internet was going to be the home of big business, but it turned out to be the home and really a level playing field where your next door neighbor has an equal chance of success to a large corporation. And I will tell you, the seeds of running for governor were actually planted at eBay because I saw the power of small business every single day. The courage, the determination that it takes to venture out on your own and to start a business and to pursue the California and the American dream. I also saw how government can get in the way. Taxation, bureaucracy, and regulation. And we had sellers in all 50 states, and I will tell you, without a doubt, this is the most difficult state in the country to do business, with the possible exception of New York City. And so I began to think, gosh, job creation is done by small business. Is there ways that we can help small business? And then I had a chance to work on Mitt Romney's campaign, and when he stepped down on John McCain's campaign, John and I fought against new taxes on the internet together. And I adored serving with those two men. And they were an inspiration to me. No matter what you think about John McCain and Mitt Romney, they're great Americans and they're great patriots, and they were running for their country. So those two experiences, plus what I saw happening to California, in the end, the reason that I decided to run is I refuse to believe that California cannot be better than it is. This is the golden state. This is the state which led the nation. We are the heart of innovation. This is the place everyone wanted to come. And look what has happened over the last 10 years. We now have the third highest unemployment rate in the country at 12.4%. In fact, the underemployment rate, those who are working 30 hours who wish they were working 40 or have given up looking, is close to 17%. And I see the heartbreak on the campaign trail every day. Kids who can't go back to UC last fall because one of their parents lost a job and fees went up by 32%. Husbands telling wives telling husbands they can't hang on to their house because one of them has lost a job and they can't hold on to the house they bought just 3 or 4 years ago.